61, nays are 36. The bill, as amended, has passed.
One step closer to history tonight, and a rare show of bipartisanship in a divided government. The Senate passes the Marriage Equality Act, safeguarding same-sex and interracial marriages. Breaking news tonight, we have a verdict in the trial of the leader of the far-right Oath Keepers militia group. And severe weather watch, portions of the country on high alert for tornadoes, damaging winds, and large hail as we're closely monitoring a cross-country storm. Rob Marciano is timing it all out. A push from President Biden for the House and Senate to help avoid a potentially crippling rail strike. It could devastate the nation's supply chain this holiday season and cost hundreds of thousands of workers their jobs. The world's largest active volcano is spewing lava. The new video of Mauna Loa erupting, and what officials in Hawaii are most concerned about tonight as new lava flows continue to emerge. Police shortages are hitting departments large and small across the country. As communities grapple with rising crime, officers are walking away from the job, leaving departments scrambling to recruit and retain its ranks. What's behind the shortage? And can the next generation of officers be convinced to wear the badge?
Yes, it's a good job. It's an honorable job, but it's almost not worth it.
In a game fraught with political tension against Iran, the big shot for the U.S. to send the team to the World Cup's knockout round. A handful of truths, our deep conversation with an award-winning director about his new visually stunning and abstract film, life in general, and the common struggles we all share that bring us together.
False Chronicle of a Handful of Truth is that this film is made of things, of the fabric of it. It's about memories and dreams and feelings.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. A landmark guilty verdict in the nation's capital. A jury convicting the leader of the Oath Keepers and one of his key allies in a seditious conspiracy trial for the role that the far-right militia group played in the rallying the January 6th attack. Stuart Rhodes, the Yale Law School graduate who founded the Oath Keepers back in 2009, guilty of plotting to use force to stop the peaceful transfer of power after Joe Biden defeated President Trump in the 2020 election. Prosecutors say the Oath Keepers laid the groundwork for what turned into a deadly insurrection attempt that day. To be clear, of the hundreds of charges tied to the attack on the Capitol, seditious conspiracy is the most serious. The verdict is a major victory for Attorney General Merrick Garland and the Justice Department and marks the first seditious conspiracy convictions by a jury since 1995. It's also the latest reminder of just how serious the threat of extremism in this country can be. Our Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas leads us off.
Tonight, a D.C. jury convicting top leaders of the Oath Keepers militia of seditious conspiracy for plotting to stop Joe Biden from becoming president. Stuart Rhodes, the leader of the Oath Keepers, and one of his key lieutenants, Kelly Meggs, are now facing up to decades in prison for their roles in the January 6th insurrection. Meggs, along with other members of the group, can be seen marching in lockstep in tactical gear, heading up the steps toward the Capitol. Prosecutors pointing to Rhodes in a video from November 2020, predicting what would happen.
We have men already stationed outside D.C. as a nuclear option in case they attempt to remove the president illegally. We will step in and stop.
This is the first time a jury has decided that the January 6th violence was a product of organized conspiracy. Jury apparently buying the prosecutor's claim that the Oath Keepers were prepared to use force, that these guns, including assault weapons stored in a Virginia hotel, were to be used to wage war if President Trump had given the word. Rhodes, Meggs, and 3 other defendants were also found guilty of obstructing an official proceeding, specifically Congress's certification of Joe Biden as president on January 6th. Critical evidence in the case appears to be text messages from Rhodes and other members of the group. Rhodes writing, "We aren't getting through this without a civil war." In another, he wrote, "It will be a bloody and desperate fight. We're going to have a fight. That can't be avoided." Rhodes and a number of the Oath Keepers had testified in their trial, suggesting not to take their incendiary language seriously, that they were not planning to commit violence. The jury clearly didn't buy it, convicting Rhodes and Meggs of seditious conspiracy, a charge rarely brought and prosecuted. Among the last prominent cases was one involving the blind Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman, accused of plotting to wage an urban terror war against the United States.
Pierre Thomas joins us now. And Pierre, we know the leaders of the Oath Keepers and other members are not the only group charged.
Lindsay, we have another major trial involving seditious conspiracy coming up with the Proud Boys, who prosecutors say sparked the violence by first knocking down those barriers on January 6th. Seditious conspiracy is the most serious charge the government has brought, and tonight prosecutors are very happy. They say they hope this sends a message that anyone who actively plots to overthrow the government will pay a price, Lindsay.
All right, Pierre Thomas, our thanks to you as always.
Pleasure.
Next to the tornado threat, millions in 3 southern states could have a long night ahead. The severe weather then heads east. Rob Marciano is tracking the threat tonight from Jackson, Mississippi. Hey, Rob.
Hi, Lindsay. A bit of a late start to this severe weather outbreak, but the past hour or two, we've been surrounded by tornadic cells, including one just to the south by about an hour where a tornado is on the ground. They've expanded the watch, which has been big to start with, into Alabama now. That PDS moniker, that means particularly dangerous situation. They don't put it out lightly, and it's aptly named for tonight. There you see the red boxes. That's where the tornado warnings are, and all those cells are being pushed along by a very strong winter-like jet stream moving at 55 miles an hour. This is nighttime falls, making it even more dangerous and frightening. Winter, yes, still happening across the upper Midwest. We've got snow emergencies in Minneapolis, warnings up and through parts of northern Wisconsin. The wind advisories around the center of this low tonight in Illinois, Indiana, and through the hand of Michigan, pushing into the northeast tomorrow. Let's time this thing out. The most dangerous weather will be over the next 5 to 6 hours. Louisiana, Mississippi, in through northern Alabama, pushing into Birmingham and eventually Atlanta overnight tonight. That's when these cells will weaken some, but still the threat for severe weather and damaging winds pushing to the Carolina coastline by tomorrow midday. And by then, the northern part of this thing is into the northeast with not just rain, but wind, potentially damaging wind through the afternoon, and certainly making for a very messy rush hour for the big cities along I-95. But by far the most life-threatening weather is here in the south tonight. Lindsay?
Yeah, not many regions making it out of this thing unscathed. Rob, our thanks to you, and stay safe. Now to the action in Washington to try to avert a looming rail strike. Today, President Biden invited congressional leaders from both parties to the White House just weeks before Republicans take control of the House, urging them to intervene in the rail strike threat that could cripple the economy. Here's ABC senior White House correspondent Mary Bruce on what action Congress might take.
With a potentially catastrophic shutdown of the nation's railroads just days away, President Biden tonight is urging Congress to step in and prevent a strike.
Congress, I think, has to act to prevent it. It's not an easy call, but I think we have to do it. The economy's at risk.
The president telling me he's optimistic.
Mr. President, are you confident you can avoid a rail strike? And what's your
Under the Commerce Clause, the Constitution grants Congress the authority to intervene and prevent a strike because the railways are so crucial to the national economy. Congressional leaders are now planning to bring up legislation to impose a tentative deal reached earlier this year between the rail companies and labor unions.
Tomorrow morning, we will have a bill on the floor. I don't like going against the ability of unions to strike, but weighing the equities, we must avoid a strike. Jobs will be lost.
It's a politically dangerous move for the president, who prides himself on being a staunch defender of unions and one he had hoped to avoid. In September, Biden helped negotiate a deal, but several unions walked away, insisting their scheduling concerns were not addressed. Republican leader Kevin McCarthy.
The president told us all that this was solved long before the election. And now we find ourselves in the last moments, in the last hours, asking us to rush a bill to the floor. Nobody wants the economy to fail.
But even as he took aim at the president, McCarthy tonight supporting congressional action. A shutdown would have a devastating impact on the economy, roiling supply chains and creating shortages, driving up the cost of everything from gas to groceries, freezing almost 30% of U.S. cargo shipments. According to one estimate, consumers and businesses could lose up to $2 billion a day. A strike would also wreak havoc for the nearly 7 million commuters and travelers that rely on the rails.
A strike would certainly be disruptive. Mary Bruce joins us now from the White House. Mary, how are the unions reacting to these discussions in Washington?
Well, Lindsay, one of the unions that was holding out hope for a better deal says it is deeply disappointed and disagrees with the president's decision to ask Congress to intervene. And they are warning that moving forward without getting more paid sick time for workers will, quote, worsen supply chain issues and further sicken, infuriate, and disenfranchise rail workers.
And another story that you've been tracking today in Washington, with Republican leaders weighing in on that dinner at Mar-a-Lago with former President Trump, Kanye West, and a known white supremacist. You really pressed the House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy and Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell. Let's take a listen.
Mr. McCarthy, is there a reason that you have yet to condemn the former president for having that dinner with the white supremacist?
I don't think anybody should be spending any time with Nick Fuentes. He has no place in this Republican Party.
Anyone meeting with people advocating that point of view, in my judgment, are highly unlikely to ever be elected president of the United States.
Some distancing there from the former president, but they did seem to hold back a bit.
Yeah, look, it is pretty clear that the Republican leader does not think that Donald Trump should ever be president again, but he notably did not call him out by name, and neither did Kevin McCarthy. He was clear in condemning white supremacy, but he didn't condemn Donald Trump. And the former president has actually just now responded to Fox News, taking a shot at McConnell, saying that he wouldn't have been reelected if it weren't for Trump's endorsement. Lindsay.
All right, Mary Bruce from the White House for us. Thanks so much, Mary.
Thank you.
Also in Washington tonight, the Senate has approved a landmark new bill protecting same-sex and interracial marriage in this country. 12 Republicans joined all Democrats in voting yes. The measure gained support after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, leading to concerns that other rights could be under threat. The bill now goes back to the House and could be ready for the president to sign next week. Tonight, we're getting a look at new images of the world's largest active volcano erupting. Here's a look at the awesome sight of Mauna Loa at night tonight. Scientists are reporting new fountains of lava, some rising as high as 200 feet. Authorities say there's no immediate threat to residents, but officials are urging people to be on alert about the impact of volcanic smog and air quality, and are warning those with respiratory problems to limit their exposure. Next tonight, Team USA is moving on in a must-win match. The U.S. men's national team beat Iran 1-0 to advance to the knockout round of the World Cup. But the game's hero had to be taken to the hospital. ABC's Will Reeve is in Qatar with the details.
It was win or go home for the U.S. men's national team, and tonight they delivered against Iran. But tonight, U.S. Soccer says superstar Christian Pulisic, who was injured as he scored the game's only goal, has been taken to the hospital for scans on his abdomen. The young U.S. squad advancing to the World Cup round of 16, hoping to keep the attention on the pitch and away from the geopolitical drama after Iran demanded the U.S. be expelled from the tournament for posting the Iranian flag with the Islamic Republic emblem removed on its social media accounts. U.S. Soccer saying the image was intended to show solidarity with the months-long human rights protests across Iran. The altered flag was later taken down. But Iranian journalists hitting back at Monday's news conference, at one point asking Captain Tyler Adams, who is African-American,
"Are you okay to be representing a country that has so much discrimination against black people?"
Adams responding, careful not to criticize Iran's crackdown on civil rights movements.
In the U.S., we're continuing to make progress every single day. It's a process. I think as long as you see progress, that's the most important thing.
Lindsay, the U.S. will play the Netherlands on Saturday in the knockout stage. And just moments ago, Christian Pulisic sharing a message online saying, "I'll be ready Saturday. Don't worry." Lindsay?
Many hopeful that he'll play. Will, thank you. And for more on today's do or die victory, we're joined by Christine Brennan, USA Today columnist and ABC News contributor. Christine, we got a party going. Let's start with the celebration for the U.S. men's national team. How big of a deal is this to advance to the knockout round of the World Cup?
Lindsay, this is a very big deal. It's been 8 years since the U.S. men have been in the World Cup, and they have made the round of 16. And in fact, to win in the round of 16, to make the quarterfinals, that hasn't happened in 20 years, since 2002. If the U.S. men were to beat Netherlands, that they would then be able to achieve that goal. But right now, the celebration is all about this incredible match against Iran, being able to hold on, a war of attrition, so tight. You could feel the nation exhale, that collective breath you felt at the moment that the game was over. And of course, the incredible story. I've covered a lot of sports, as you know, over the years, and Christian Pulisic scoring that goal, the 1-0 win, obviously absolutely essential. The U.S. could not tie. They had to win. And then, of course, having to leave the game, injuring himself as he just went headlong, devil-may-care attitude, anything for the team, every last ounce of energy on the field, ends up with an abdominal injury, tried to play, left at halftime, now is in the hospital. That's the latest report. He says, he put on social media, he was so proud of his team, and he said, I'll see you Saturday. But we don't know. We don't know how bad his injury is. Just the drama, Lindsay. I mean, this is the kind of stuff people write novels about, but in this case, it's all true.
And as you say, you use the word drama, right? Because we're talking about even just in his health, but on a global scale, really, because you have the Iranian players who stood in silence during the national anthem before their opening match against England in apparent solidarity with anti-government protesters. This reportedly earned them a warning and threats to their families. Today, most, if not all, could be seen singing. Could there be consequences now that they're heading home from Qatar?
Lindsay, there sure could. And I think everyone's thoughts and hearts go out to those players because they did protest. They did do something that could be, well, it was very courageous and could, as the reporting has been now, bring grave consequences to them and their families when they get home. And they are headed home now because they did not move on as the U.S. beat them. And absolutely, I think, this is a very scary time for them, the Iranian men's team. This is something that I think everyone should be concerned about. And as the U.S. soccer, of course, did not put the Islamic Republic emblem on the flag for a period of time for the social media post that got so much attention. But the bottom line, and there it is, of course, you can see it. The bottom line is that means the U.S. soccer, the U.S. men's national team was standing in solidarity with the Iranian players and the Iranian protesters and women of Iran. And so even as the U.S. beat Iran and sent them home, I am sure that the U.S. men's national team and everyone in U.S. soccer is very concerned about their well-being because they stood on the same side as them in terms of supporting the protests, supporting their nation.
And to that point, just to piggyback on that, I mean, talk to us about the U.S. team's willingness to kind of get into that controversy and speak up about that.
This is in their DNA, Lindsay. This is a team of Title IX males. By that, I mean raised in the era of Title IX, supporting their sisters. They were raised very differently than their dads or their grandfathers. These are young men who do not shy away from societal issues. The U.S. men's national team, U.S. soccer, having the Rainbow Shield for LGBTQ rights, not on their uniforms, but using that in the team hotel and at other team activities, social activities, et cetera. This is also the team, of course, a few months ago was a very big story when the U.S. women's national team, which of course is so successful, so popular, wins World Cup, wins Olympic gold medals, then when they got equal pay, finally, from U.S. soccer. Well, you know how that happened? It was these men, most of these same players, saying, we want to give up some of the money we get to make sure that the women get equal pay. That's what these guys are. It's a very different, much more focused socially.
Which is equally as important in some respects. And of course, now they've moved on to the knockout round. Do you think that this U.S. team is capable of making a run deep into the tournament, possibly even winning it?
They're going to need Pulisic back. They're going to need to be healthy, and they're going to need a little luck. I know they're going to have to score a little bit more than they have so far. Netherlands is tough, 8th ranked in the world, and then it could be Argentina in the next round.
And let's see if they can beat Argentina. I know when Saudi Arabia beat them, they were able to get those Rolls-Royce Phantoms from the Prince in Saudi Arabia. We'll see what kind of reward America can get. Christine, always great to talk with you. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. Take care.
When we come back, the heart-stopping moments as an officer raced to rescue a woman who drove her car into a canal. Exploring identity and family with a visually stunning backdrop, Oscar-winning director Alejandro Iñárritu tells us about the challenges of filming such an ambitious project, especially in the middle of the pandemic. But first, the bidding war in cities across the country for police officers as violent crime rises in some parts of the nation. They're struggling to keep law enforcement jobs filled. Why so many officers are leaving the badge behind. This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
in Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
Here at the White House. Destructive Cat 4 storm.
Here along I-5. Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go. We made it.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7 straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Bring them on.
If only there was a place in the morning to start my day. With a smile, somewhere to help me get in the know. A place as spectacular as, well, me.
I think we might know a place, right, guys?
Bring your friends. Oh, wait, there is.
Good morning, America.
GMA, 7A, every day. Boom, boom, boom.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Robin. Good morning, America. How are you?
Boom. Now that's how you start your day, people.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
How cute.
Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
Friday, 2020 True Crime.
No one could believe it.
Do you think he preyed on you?
He did.
He did, at one point, blame the devil.
2020.
That explosive secret was about to be revealed.
Friday night on ABC. So, what's good to read? And we mean really good to read right now. Well, that's where Charlie and Kate Gibson can help.
Join us for the new podcast series. It is called The Bookcase with Kate and Charlie.
We will make sure you love what you read.
Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
With so much happening these days, it's hard to keep up.
Things change hour by hour, minute by minute.
The historic weather that's now unfolding.
The worries on Wall Street.
We're bringing you the Right Now. But a nationwide teacher shortage.
The Right Now look at the day ahead. An alert this morning for dog owners and the key takeaways from the biggest stories.
World News Now and America This Morning, America's #1 early morning news.
Today does feel a little different. Early mornings on ABC News Live.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
As of today, in a big way, we have inaugurated abcnews.com.
A lot has changed in our world since Peter made that announcement. But what hasn't changed is the commitment to groundbreaking reporting and innovation at abcnews.com. And here's to everything ahead.
Take a look at this video. What you're looking at is a desperate race in Florida to save a woman who drove her car into a canal. Body camera video captured early this morning shows one Cape Coral officer holding a flashlight as another jumps into the water. He uses a tool to bang against the window until it finally breaks, allowing him to pull the woman out of the sinking car and ultimately get her to safety. And speaking of the valiant work of the police, from big cities to small towns, law enforcement agencies across the country are in a bidding war for new officers, offering bonuses and perks, trying to recruit the next generation of police officers as many lifelong first responders leave the profession in droves. It's leading to significant shortages impacting cities that are already dealing with increases in violent crime. ABC's Jay O'Brien looks into why so many officers are walking away from the job.
All Anthony Carapucci ever wanted to be was a cop. An Afghanistan war veteran, the son of 2 police officers, public service felt like his calling.
Policing is essentially really all I know. You know, I love the job.
But in September, after almost a decade with the Philadelphia Police Department, he quit.
Thank you for doing this.
And called us after turning in his gun and badge, feeling burnt out.
It was kind of heartbreaking in a sense. I'm not going to lie, you know, because it's really everything that I knew, everything that I loved. Yes, it's a good job. It's an honorable job, but it's almost not worth it.
Philadelphia, like other major American cities, is seeing an exodus of police officers. Los Angeles is down at least 500 cops. New Orleans, more than 300 officers short from a few years ago. And in Wisconsin this year, the entire state reached a record low for police officers. But in the city of brotherly love, Police Commissioner Danielle Outlaw is facing a shortage of 600 officers, roughly 10% of the force's full strength, nearly the same number of cops out on disability.
How long until your staffing levels are critical?
It's critical now. It's already critical. It was critical a year ago.
Bracing for a crushing wave of upcoming officer retirements, a city report also found Outlaw's team needs to triple its recruitment over the next 3 years to avoid even worse shortages.
You can only eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? We're going to be realistic about that. And in order, look at those numbers. That took time to get here.
It sounds like you're saying that your numbers of officers, the shortages you face, are going to get worse before they get better.
I think so.
You've had homicides right in this neighborhood
right in the corner, yeah.
Jamal Johnson, an anti-violence activist, told us he went from protesting police brutality a few years ago to pleading for more cops on the streets to stop the current surge of violence. Philadelphia saw a record-breaking 562 homicides last year. Upwards of 460 people murdered so far this year. At this intersection Johnson walked us to, one man was shot 16 times in October.
We've been out here for half hour, haven't seen a single police officer.
Right. It's not unusual.
That's common.
It's not unusual.
There used to be a police car, locals told us, frequently parked right out front of Nuvo's hair salon, but it hasn't been there for months.
What was the last time you saw a police officer out here?
Last year.
And inside, Kenitra Scott and Taylin Botino say that's when this intersection turned its most dangerous.
When the police were removed from parking out front here, is that when the killing started to pick up on that corner?
Yes, because since last year, all the killings started through the summer till now.
Outlaw says her department is still responding quickly to priority calls like murders and shootings. But patrolling and proactive policing, stopping crimes before they occur, are often some of the first tasks put on pause when a department's ranks dip.
It seems like you're leading a department that's just getting burned out.
I think many of us are. Many of us are.
Across the country.
Across the country. This is not unique to Philadelphia.
A recent survey of law enforcement leaders found over half of agencies in the U.S. have fewer officers than they did 4 or 5 years ago. And nearly 3 out of every 4 departments warned their number of new applicants dropped off significantly over that same period. In Virginia,
Batman, come out now, you're gonna get bit!
At the Fairfax County Criminal Justice Academy,
boy, buddy!
Their numbers have been in steady decline for years.
In 2018, our average class size was in the 50s. Now our average class size starts in the 30s.
This police department's been around since 1940, and it's never had the vacancy rate that we have now, in spite of us doing more on the recruiting and retention end than we've ever done before.
Fairfax County Police Chief Kevin Davis says exit interviews show officers are leaving because they're not feeling valued and think they can find better opportunities elsewhere.
They're going into IT, they're going into sales, they're teaching. We've even had a person leave to go be a farmer.
Many cops across the country now forced to work punishing mandatory overtime to make up for big shortages, and some discouraged by how they're treated, including hearing phrases like defund the police.
I know that the sentiment behind defund the police is police better, and police better particularly in black and brown communities. A 24-year-old cop who hasn't lived very long sees that phrase as a anti-police rhetoric. And it makes them feel a certain way, and it doesn't make them feel very good.
There are those that would say law enforcement's undermined its own credibility. What's your response to that?
But those are the same people that will call 911 and will file a complaint if we don't get there quickly enough.
But in this great resignation, where millions, including cops, are leaving lifelong jobs, the clock is ticking.
Does he pose a threat?
To convince millennials and even Gen Z that police work is worth it.
Examine your heart. Do you want to serve? Do you want to make your community better and your family safer and your neighbors safer and your friends safer?
In Fairfax, because their applicant pool is smaller, the academy is now focused on outreach to the most dedicated of potential recruits, like Mitra Imtiazian. She drives 3 hours both ways every day to attend this academy.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Inspired by the call to serve.
I couldn't see myself doing anything else.
But back in Philadelphia,
I can't imagine being more worried about law enforcement than I am right now.
John Hoyt with the city's police union says the sons and daughters of cops, many of whom used to jump at the chance to enter the family business, now are not.
The problem is those mothers and fathers that are current police officers or retired are saying don't go into the business.
Right now, Commissioner Outlaw's task, she believes, is to convince the Philadelphia community that policing is still a trusted profession, under pressure to grow her ranks before too many cops leave for good.
I've always been optimistic. Law enforcement has been around for how many years now? I mean,
And you don't think it's going anywhere?
No.
Our thanks to Joe O'Brien for that. Still ahead here on Prime, the city imposing a controversial new policy to involuntarily hospitalize people who are mentally ill. Despite missile strikes targeting its power grid and hitting its infrastructure, we get a first-hand look at how Ukraine is pushing forward to rebuild and rehabilitate its communities. Were you born on a day when hospitals were full, or were there quite a few spare rooms? We take a look at the most and least common birthdays by the numbers. But first, our tweet of the day. Some good news if you're a Broadway fan. Phantom of the Opera is sticking around a bit longer.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
Tonight, we celebrate the best rapper alive.
This is the Lil Wayne you know.
Make some noise for this foreigner.
This is the Lil Wayne you don't know.
Who is Lil Wayne in 2022?
This is Impact by Nightline.
You have to stop, take a minute, breathe, look back and reflect and all that to actually feel something. I don't know how to do that.
Now streaming only on Hulu.
With so much at stake in our world right now, we wanted to thank you for your trust and for making ABC News America's #1 news.
And thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
This is where I belong. This is home. Real dirt in the sunlight again. I'm very excited. Anything could happen at any moment. My heart is so happy right now. We're making magic. We're making magic.
Zoo! 200!
Oh, 200. 200 episodes of Dr. Pole. Music to my ears.
It's been 10 years, and I'm still having fun.
That rocks. He's got the moves that make your animals groove.
Now we do the dance of joy. Yay! He's like the Justin Bieber of the
Headlining the hottest barns.
Shout out.
It's a show you won't want to miss.
I'm not going to be here forever. Maybe.
The Incredible Dr. Pole. New episodes Saturdays at 9 on Nat Geo Wild.
This is ABC News Live Prime.
Thanks so much for streaming with us.
Live reporting, breaking news, exclusives, award-winning, powerful, eye-opening. ABC News Live Prime with Lindsay Davis, streaming weeknights. So, what's good to read? And we mean really good to read right now. Well, that's where Charlie and Kate Gibson can help.
Join us for the new podcast series. It is called The Bookcase with Kate and Charlie.
We will make sure you love what you read.
Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back, everyone. If today is your birthday, a very happy birthday to you. But chances are it's not, and the holiday season may have something to do with that. Here's birthdays in America by the numbers. USA Today took a close look, and it turns out the most popular birthday is September 9th. Count Adam Sandler and Michelle Williams among the many celebrities who celebrate that day. September birthdays dominate the top of the list. In fact, 12 of the top 15 spots when it comes to birthday popularity fall in the 9th month of the year. Of course, you have to rewind about 40 weeks to see the full story, and that suggests that the annual baby boom in September actually begins during the run-up to Christmas in the next 2 weeks or so. Taken by month, the data shows the 8th month, August, actually edges out September September to account for the most newborns in the calendar year, so apparently Thanksgiving is also a time for a little romance. We should note, however, that there are 31 days in August, which does provide a statistical advantage over September by a single day. Perhaps it comes as no surprise that the least popular birthday is February 29th, which only comes around once every 4 years for those leap babies among us. And the rarest birthday on a 365-day calendar, Christmas Day, though it probably is the most celebrated birthday of all. And we still have lots to get to here on Prime. Will Smith makes his first late-night interview appearance since that Oscar slap, and why a police officer is being called the baby whisperer. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
So much happening these days, it's hard to keep up.
Things change hour by hour, minute by minute.
The historic weather that's now unfolding.
The worries on Wall Street.
We're bringing you the Right Now. Been a nationwide teacher shortage.
The Right Now look at the day ahead. An alert this morning for dog owners and the key takeaways from the biggest stories.
World News Now and America This Morning, America's #1 early morning news.
Today does feel a little different. Early mornings on ABC News Live.
Tonight, we celebrate the best rapper alive.
This is the Lil Wayne you know.
Make some noise for this foreigner.
Hey,
This is the Lil Wayne you don't know.
Who is Lil Wayne in 2022?
This is Impact by Nightline.
You have to stop, take a minute, breathe, look back and reflect and all that to actually feel something. I don't know how to do that.
Now streaming only on Hulu.
This is where I belong. This is home. Real dirt in the sunlight again. I'm very excited. Anything could happen at any moment. My heart is so happy right now. We're making magic. We're making magic.
Friday, 2020 True Crime.
No one could believe it.
Do you think he preyed on you?
He did.
He did, at one point, blame the devil.
2020.
That explosive secret was about to be revealed.
Friday night on ABC. Now streaming on ABC News Live. 2020 True Crime. Cinematic, real-life drama. Stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True Crime. 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
Can I hug you?
Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
The White House racing against the clock to keep rail workers on the job and avoid what President Biden says would be a crippling shutdown of the nation's critical freight railroads. Rail workers could abandon their posts as soon as next Friday if all 12 unions that represent them do not unanimously agree to a tentative work deal reached in September. So far, 8 of the rail workers' unions have agreed to the tentative deal led by the Biden administration this fall. It comes with a 24% pay raise for rail workers by 2024, annual bonuses of $1,000 and a cap on health care premiums. But the contract talks stalled as 4 of the unions, which represent a majority of the workers, also pushed for paid sick leave to be added.
Officials in 2 battleground state counties declined to certify their midterm election results. Republicans in Cochise County, Arizona, cited concerns about machine certification and are delaying certification until Friday. Most voters there had gone for Republicans Carrie Lake for governor and Blake Masters for Senate, both of whom lost their races. In Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, Republicans opposed certifying the results over concerns about paper ballots, but were slated to vote again Wednesday. Voters there chose Democratic gubernatorial candidate Josh Shapiro, who won, and Republican Senate candidate Mehmet Oz. Both counties risk legal action from their respective states by delaying certification. A guilty plea in relation to the death of Army Specialist Vanessa Guillen. Cicely Aguilar pled guilty for her role in allegedly helping her boyfriend, Aaron Robinson, dispose of Guillen's remains after he beat Guillen to death at Fort Hood in April 2020. Aguilar was supposed to begin trial in January before her guilty plea. She faces up to 30 years in prison. Guillen's sister, Myra, reacted outside of court.
Now we have to wait for the actual sentencing, and I'm glad that we're going to have an opportunity to speak in front of the judge and in front of her.
The boil water advisory that had been in place in Houston has now been lifted. Officials had implemented the order Sunday after a power outage led to dangerously low water pressure. Now officials say that the water quality has been restored and passed the proper lab tests, and residents no longer need to boil water before consuming it. Public schools in Houston, however, were closed for a second day as a precaution.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams laid out a plan designed to help more people experiencing severe mental illness in the city, including involuntarily hospitalizing them in certain cases.
This directive lays out an expedited step-by-step process for involuntarily transporting a person experiencing a mental health crisis to a hospital for evaluation.
The mayor also announced an 11-point legislative agenda that focuses on gaps in the state's mental hygiene law that creates challenges in meeting the needs of people with severe mental illness. The city is also launching a hotline to provide police officers with direct access to clinicians.
Will Smith making his first appearance on late-night TV since his onstage assault of comedian Chris Rock at the Oscars in February. Smith says after returning to his seat, he was in a daze that lasted until a frank conversation with his 9-year-old nephew who would watch the show at home.
He had stayed up late to see his Uncle Will, and we're sitting in my kitchen, and he's on my lap, and he's holding the Oscar, and he's just like, "Why did you hit that man, Uncle Will?"
After being subject to immense social media backlash for the slap, Smith resigned from the Academy, which later banned him from all events for the next decade.
You're asking, what did I learn? And it's that we just got to be nice to each other, man.
Now to the war in Ukraine, where Russia is using rockets to terrorize the population and target the country's power grid and infrastructure, leaving millions without heat and electricity as the winter sets in. Ukraine's defenders are pushing forward, trying to advance against Russian forces as they also work to rebuild and rehabilitate communities freed from Russian control. ABC's chief global affairs anchor Martha Raddatz recently traveled to Ukraine and has this report.
It has been 9 months of fear, destruction, and unimaginable loss. Indiscriminate Russian strikes this week, pummeling residential areas, a maternity hospital, and power grids. Blackouts again paralyzing cities and towns across Ukraine as winter takes a brutal hold. And the fight is far from over. These Ukrainian forces are constantly training. Many of these soldiers have already been to the front lines, but many are going back. They are citizens transformed. Volunteers like Alexander, who runs a travel business, has seen relentless fighting in the east.
38-hour battle?
Yeah, and only 2 hours we have time for drink, for toilet, and for sleeping. Very hard.
Intense?
Yes.
And you would go back in a minute?
Yes, of course.
And Petro, who has a small business, unbowed even after estimates of as many as 100,000 Ukrainian soldiers killed on the battlefield.
You will win?
We will win.
You will win, no matter what?
No matter what. In Ukraine we say "воля або смерть." It's translated like freedom or death.
Freedom or death.
And helping to train many of the Ukrainian soldiers, a team led by British-born retired U.S. Marine Andrew Milburn, who has seen the fighting perilously close. Colonel Milburn had multiple combat deployments and fought in the Battle of Fallujah in Iraq.
And Fallujah was my worst experience of multiple tours to Iraq and Afghanistan. Here, though, it's a different sort of fear. You're out in the open, but once artillery starts coming down on you, it's a sense of absolute helplessness, unless you are near some kind of cover.
And Milburn's team, the Mozart Group, does not carry weapons or join in the fighting. They train and they help evacuate citizens.
You know, we were pulling kids out of Lysychansk, Novoheladsk as the Russians were closing in on the town. We don't have armored vehicles. You know, I mean, the risk levels are off the charts for anyone who's served in the Western military. And yet we continue to do it because there's a need. And as winter approaches, that need is only going to get greater. You have to see these towns to believe them.
Buildings destroyed and lives as well. The top U.S. military official estimated 40,000 Ukrainian civilians have been killed.
This is Bucha, about 20 miles outside of Kyiv. Behind me was once a mass grave containing the bodies of hundreds of Ukrainian civilians slaughtered by Russian troops. For those who remain in this town, the survivors, the pain is still vivid.
Life has resumed now that the Russians have been pushed out, but in the town center, teams of psychologists help children deal with loss and trauma through play. The children choose toys according to what worries them, she says.
So you've got fighter jets, you've got military vehicles.
She says those are the toys most used by the kids. They even speak about the possibility of nuclear war. One of the caseworkers wanted to show us exactly how this works for a child. There is a moment of silence at first. But then the psychologist's own memories quickly bring her to tears.
That was very emotional for you, and you do this all the time. What were you thinking?
She says she wanted to place two angels to symbolize the victims, but then said she simply couldn't because she was there during the massacre. She helped people look for their missing loved ones, and the memories were all too hard. And it is, of course, not just the people of Bucha who have suffered. No starker example than this one. These 5 siblings now orphaned after a mortar took the life of their 37-year-old single mother. 18-year-old Slava, who watched his mother die beside him, the only one left to care for his young siblings. He does it while continuing his studies and working full-time. Just believe in yourself, he told me, and this is how you can succeed.
And your mother taught you that?
You see that same determination everywhere you go in Ukraine, and yet Andrew Milburn worries that this war will grind on for months, for years to come.
Right now, when you look at what the Ukrainian military strategy is, what is it?
It's a really good question, and I'm not sure that anyone can give a clear picture of that. In order to conduct a really game-changing, I keep using that term, offensive, you need sufficient resources as far as manpower and weapon systems.
When you look at where the Ukrainians are and the enormous amount of aid they've gotten, do you believe if they don't get more aid that it is conceivable they can win?
It is conceivable. Look, the West has been extraordinarily helpful in providing high-end platforms, but the Russians have adapted. This is not a criticism of U.S. foreign policy, maybe it is. It's just a sense that this is going to be a long, bloody war. Ukrainian victory is, in my mind, ultimately most likely. Unless the West really embraces the prospect of Ukrainian victory, and barring a black swan event, this is going to be a long, bloody slog.
Our thanks to Martha for that. In a dreamlike flurry of images and sounds, a renowned Mexican journalist explores and grapples with personal yet common human experiences like issues with identity and family in this visually stunning and abstract film from Netflix, Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths.
No, I really need him to give us an apology.
Sir, I'll take care of it.
No, I need an apology now.
Pa, ¿qué pasó? Ya déjalo.
No. I need this guy to say this is our home. Say you are sorry. Say you are sorry. Come on. Say it.
And joining us now is the iconic director of Bardo, Alejandro Iñárritu. Thank you. First of all, let me give you your proper due.
Please,
Pleased to have you here.
Thank you.
Let's just start with the title, Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths. Explain to us what the meaning is of that.
Bardo is kind of the equivalent of limbo in the Catholic tradition, which is this place where, when after dying, you are in this place before a rebirth, to become in the new stage. And in Bardo, in the Buddhist tradition, is kind of the same. And for me, it was a way to say that, and False Chronicle of a Handful of Truth is that this film is made of things, of the fabric of it is about memories and dreams and feelings, which are very elusive, and they don't exist. We just create them, and they are being transformed, and they are like music. They are in constant movement, and that's what this film is made of. So it is part of experience and part of reinterpretation of those. It's a reflection of a reality. It's not a reality.
And for the viewers, you really talked about this. There's this real, but yet not. You have to really kind of try to deduce what is actually happening. And in fact, how much of a challenge is that from a production standpoint?
It's very difficult because I didn't want this to be kind of an hallucination or a magical realism, because I think reality is more magic than real, you know. And I think that our own memories, when we allow ourselves to challenge them, in a way they are transformed. So in production, to put a scene that feels like music, like a lucid dream, that you are aware that you are dreaming, you know what I mean? That something is off and it's not crazy. And the light here and the locations and the scope, from intimate little things to epic things, from the memory of the country that I born in, Mexico. It was a massive challenge, and it was in the middle of the pandemic that we shot this film.
And you talk, as you've highlighted, that this is really about the struggle of immigrants, of somebody who's living in a new country, even though you still long for, in some cases, love your homeland. How do you think that will resonate? In particular, we're talking about this main character is grappling with leaving Mexico. And I'm curious what your thought is, how that'll resonate with viewers.
I think, you know, when for all of us who have lived, and we are immigrants, I think melancholy or nostalgia can be an enemy, you know, it can be a trap. Humor, it's remedy. So I try to approach this film with certain kind of humor in a way that I think this film requires from me a different kind of process, an introspection that I have never done so much. I was always making films. I have talked about immigration from an objective point of view, but this time was a subjective experience. So the material is very personal, it's very intimate, from my kids, that they have been moving from place to place, country to country as a gypsy family, and that creates a lot of opportunities, but a lot of contradictions and traumas. I took the chance to put my own things that I know well with some things that I share with the memory. So it took like, it's not an autobiography, it's an autofiction. It's a way to reinterpret your life, to heal the wounds through art, you know, to reinterpret. That's why, because life is not perfect.
And so you say it's not an autobiography. Was it cathartic for you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a very liberating thing when you tell your own things. You put the material in it. But then I think fiction, in a way, betrays reality in order to find a higher truth, because reality hides things, and fiction really put the light on it. You know, you have the way to really make it as truthful as reality, because it's subjective reality.
In some ways, might you say that this is a love letter to Mexico or to the people of Mexico?
It is, because I think, you know, there's no more a Mexican guy than the one who has left Mexico. You become more Mexican. If you will go to live to Italy, you will become more American than any American. You know what I mean? It's a very weird thing. At the same time, you can start seeing your country with a perspective that is different, and the narratives that you have been told start to being different. I haven't shot in Mexico City in 20 years. So the return to shoot the film, that was already an experience, a meta experience, that I was experiencing the same as the character. So it's like to find a new old friend that you know better, but everything has changed. But obviously, I think people has never seen Mexico the way I did it, because obviously I have a perspective. This time I did not took or told the story about that I have done of marginalized or very, in a way, the very tough circumstances that most of the immigrants go through, that I have been interested. This time was from my perspective. And I said that I'm a first-class immigrant, and I am a privilege. But no matter what, we share that deep feeling of having been moved so much with your family in a way. I think it was time to make a reflection, and I shared that with millions of people.
Alejandro, what a pleasure to have you here. We want to let our viewers know you can catch Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths at select theaters now and streaming on Netflix as of December 16th. Now to a remarkable police officer in Suffolk County, New York, who has earned the nickname the Baby Whisperer after delivering 5 babies within 5 years while on duty. ABC's Will Gans has this story.
John Eric Negron is a police officer in Suffolk County, New York, where he's risen through the ranks to become a sergeant earlier this year. But there's one title he's even more well known for.
I thought that my childbirth days were over when I became a sergeant this year.
They call him the Baby Whisperer after delivering 5 babies in as many years. The most recent, baby Owen Anthony Maldonado, born 3 weeks early in his family's living room. Sergeant Negron, along with officers Zachary Vormitog, Jaden Rodriguez, and Connor Deemer, teaming up to welcome baby Owen into the world.
You drive there, your adrenaline's going, you're not sure. You know, you're thinking a million things, but once you get there and it happens, you just do it.
The 4 officers greeted by an anxious father in the yard who led them into the living room in the basement.
Mom was definitely ready to have the baby. So she knew when it was coming out. I helped guide the baby out safely.
Only 12 minutes after the officers arrived, Mom welcomed her 3rd child right there at home.
She was very calm. Mom did great.
Baby Owen making his debut early but healthy at 6 pounds, 13 ounces.
Because the baby came out and opened his eyes, and he looked right at Connor and like, who are you? So I thought it was funny, but it was a beautiful experience. None of us have children, so this was technically our first child.
But not for Sergeant Negron. Baby Owen is his 5th. In fact, he became a godfather in 2017 of the 3rd child he helped deliver. Baby Bryce stopped breathing because an umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck. Thankfully, the Baby Whisperer was able to step in to help, just like he did this weekend.
I guess the record lives on, so we'll see how many we could take it to.
Everyone took over, and we couldn't have done it without each other.
So precious. Our thanks to Will for that. Before we go tonight, our image of the day. This is the starting lineup of your U.S. men's national team, which has advanced to the 2nd round of the World Cup. Can't wait to see what happens next. And that is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We leave you this hour with the Empire State Building all lit up in red, white, and blue in honor of Team USA's victory. We're staying on top of a few things. The new details in the case of a man accused of killing 2 teenage girls on a hiking trail. And revisiting a classic 2 decades later, the cast of Love Actually opens up about the holiday movie and reveals behind-the-scenes secrets.
With so much at stake in our world right now, we wanted to thank you for your trust and for making ABC News America's #1 news.
And thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
After an extraordinary news-making year, thank you for making ABC's This Week America's #1 news and politics show on Sunday mornings.
You never know what you're going to get on this show. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Yes, Whoopi! Is this mic on? Can you hear me out there?
Behind the scenes is always a better show.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's what people don't see during the commercial breaks.
Right, they don't.
What happened?
I had no idea really what I was getting myself into.
That day that we walked out, I treasure that day. I couldn't sit there.
You're doing good, Joy. You're doing good.
Oh, yeah, baby. It was crazy.
Behind the Table. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
It's lunchtime in America. So, what are we serving up?
Well, how about everything you need to know?
You got me feeling like
Your health, your money,
Breaking news, exclusives,
pop culture, and with the biggest stars.
music, trends, style.
And some laughs. And some good food.
you got me feeling like
You know, that sounds pretty good.
GMA 3, what you need to know. A third hour of GMA in the afternoon.
So join us, afternoons, for everything you need to know.
Tonight, we celebrate the best rapper alive.
This is the Lil Wayne you know.
Make some noise for this foreigner. Hey!
This is the Lil Wayne you don't know.
Who is Lil Wayne in 2022?
This is Impact by Nightline.
You have to stop, take a minute, breathe, look back and reflect and all that to actually feel something. I don't know how to do that.
Now streaming only on Hulu.
Hi there, I'm Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We're monitoring several developments here at ABC News at this hour. The U.S. World Cup team is keeping our hope alive. They won a do-or-die match against Iran, beating them 1-0. But the team's star Christian Pulisic was injured, scoring the game's only goal. A Walmart employee who survived last week's mass shooting at a Virginia store has filed a $50 million lawsuit against the company for allegedly continuing to employ the shooter, a store supervisor who had, quote, known propensities for violence, threats, and strange behavior. The suit alleges that the shooter, who fatally shot 6 employees and wounded several others before apparently taking his own life, had a vendetta and kept a kill list. The Senate has approved a landmark new bill protecting same-sex and interracial marriage in this country. 12 Republicans joined the Democrats in voting yes. The measure gained support after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, leading to concerns that other rights could be under threat. The bill now goes back to the House and could be ready for the president to sign next week. But we begin tonight with a major verdict for the leader of the Oath Keepers. Stuart Rhodes and another member were found guilty of seditious conspiracy in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. It's the first time a jury has found that a conspiracy led to the mob attack. Pierre Thomas starts us off with more on the verdict and the other cases tied to this dark day in our nation's history.
Tonight, a D.C. jury convicting top leaders of the Oath Keepers militia of seditious conspiracy for plotting to stop Joe Biden from becoming president. Stuart Rhodes, the leader of the Oath Keepers, and one of his key lieutenants, Kelly Meggs, are now facing up to decades in prison for their roles in the January 6th insurrection. Meggs, along with other members of the group, can be seen marching in lockstep in tactical gear, heading up the steps toward the Capitol. Prosecutors pointing to Rhodes in a video from November 2020, predicting what would happen.
We have men already stationed outside D.C. as a nuclear option in case they attempt to remove the president illegally. We will step in and stop.
This is the first time a jury has decided that the January 6th violence was a product of organized conspiracy. Jury apparently buying the prosecutor's claim that the Oath Keepers were prepared to use force, that these guns, including assault weapons stored in a Virginia hotel, were to be used to wage war if President Trump had given the word. Rhodes, Meggs, and 3 other defendants were also found guilty of obstructing an official proceeding, specifically Congress's certification of Joe Biden as president on January 6th. Critical evidence in the case appears to be text messages from Rhodes and other members of the group. Rhodes writing, "We aren't getting through this without a civil war." In another, he wrote, "It will be a bloody and desperate fight. We're going to have a fight." That can't be avoided. Rhodes and a number of the Oath Keepers had testified in their trial, suggesting not to take their incendiary language seriously, that they were not planning to commit violence. The jury clearly didn't buy it, convicting Rhodes and Meggs of seditious conspiracy, a charge rarely brought and prosecuted. Among the last prominent cases was one involving the blind Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman, accused of plotting to wage an urban terror war against the United States.
Our thanks to Pierre Thomas. Next to the tornado threat, millions in 3 southern states could have a long night ahead. The severe weather then heads east. Rob Marciano is tracking the threat tonight from Jackson, Mississippi. Hey, Rob.
Hi, Lindsay. A bit of a late start to this severe weather outbreak, but the past hour or two, we've been surrounded by tornadic cells, including one just to the south by about an hour where a tornado is on the ground. They've expanded the watch, which has been big to start with, into Alabama now. That PDS moniker, that means particularly dangerous situation. They don't put it out lightly, and it's aptly named for tonight. There you see the red boxes. That's where the tornado warnings are, and all those cells are being pushed along by a very strong winter-like jet stream moving at 55 miles an hour. This is nighttime falls, making it even more dangerous and frightening. Winter, yes, still happening across the upper Midwest. We've got snow emergencies in Minneapolis, warnings up in through parts of northern Wisconsin. The wind advisories around the center of this low tonight in Illinois, Indiana, and through the hand of Michigan, pushing into the Northeast tomorrow. Let's time this thing out. The most dangerous weather will be over the next 5 to 6 hours. Louisiana, Mississippi, in through northern Alabama, pushing into Birmingham and eventually Atlanta overnight tonight. That's when these cells will weaken some, but still the threat for severe weather and damaging winds pushing to the Carolina coastline by tomorrow midday. And by then, the northern part of this thing is into the Northeast with not just rain, but wind, potentially damaging wind through the afternoon, and certainly making for a very messy rush hour for the big cities along I-95. But by far the most life-threatening weather is here in the south tonight. Lindsay?
Yeah, not many regions making it out of this thing unscathed. Rob, our thanks to you, and stay safe. Tonight, we are getting a new look at images of the world's largest active volcano erupting. Take a look at the awesome sight of Mauna Loa at night. Authorities say there's no immediate threat, but they are warning residents on the Big Island to stay alert. Mololengi reports tonight from Hawaii.
Tonight, scientists reporting fountains of lava, some rising as high as 200 feet at times on Mauna Loa, as 2 new lava flows opened up on the mountainside. Gas, ash, and molten rock have been pouring from the world's largest active volcano since it erupted for the first time in nearly 40 years. So far, the lava streams pose no immediate threat to communities, but health officials are warning about the impact of VOG, or volcanic smog, on air quality. People with respiratory problems told to take precautions and limit their exposure.
If you are experiencing any discomfort, go indoors, close the windows.
And with residents of Hawaii's Big Island already on edge, a 4.0 earthquake rattled even more nerves early this morning, but did no damage. Mauna Loa is now part of a rare dual eruption event, joining Kilauea just a few miles away, which has been erupting for a year. Tonight, emergency officials on edge, watching for what Mauna Loa may do next.
Although the flows currently aren't threatening lives or property, Mauna Loa eruptions can be very dynamic.
Residents in areas at potential risk have been urged to review their emergency plans and be ready to evacuate if they have to.
People keeping a close eye on this. Mololengi joins us now from the Big Island. Mola, what are officials most concerned about as this eruption continues?
Well, Lindsay, officials are monitoring air quality. That is something they say could deteriorate for as long as this eruption lasts. And really, there's no telling how long that could be right now. Of course, the other major potential concern is where the lava will flow. It is currently crawling at a rate of less than 1 mile per hour. But as you can see, based on this charred lava field I'm currently standing on, several miles away from the volcano, previous eruptions have made it out this far, but that is something that could take days, if not weeks, at least based on the current dynamics and conditions, Lindsay.
I think the expectation is it will last for several more days, potentially weeks. Mola, our thanks to you. Now to the action in Washington to try to avert a looming rail strike. President Biden today invited congressional leaders from both parties to the White House just weeks before Republicans are set to take control of the House, urging them to intervene in the rail strike threat that could cripple the economy. Here's ABC's senior White House correspondent Mary Bruce on what action Congress might take.
With a potentially catastrophic shutdown of the nation's railroads just days away, President Biden tonight is urging Congress to step in and prevent a strike.
Congress, I think, has to act to prevent it. It's not an easy call, but I think we have to do it. The economy's at risk.
The president telling me he's optimistic.
Mr. President, are you confident you can avoid a rail strike? And what is your message?
Under the Commerce Clause, the Constitution grants Congress the authority to intervene and prevent a strike because the railways are so crucial to the national economy. Congressional leaders are now planning to bring up legislation to impose a tentative deal reached earlier this year between the rail companies and labor unions.
Tomorrow morning, we will have a bill on the floor. I don't like going against the ability of unions to strike, but weighing the equities, we must avoid a strike. Jobs will be lost.
It's a politically dangerous move for the president, who prides himself on being a staunch defender of unions, and one he had hoped to avoid. In September, Biden helped negotiate a deal, but several unions walked away, insisting their scheduling concerns were not addressed. Republican leader Kevin McCarthy.
The president told us all that this was solved long before the election. And now we find ourselves in the last moments, in the last hours, asking us to rush a bill to the floor. Nobody wants the economy to fail.
But even as he took aim at the president, McCarthy tonight supporting congressional action. A shutdown would have a devastating impact on the economy, roiling supply chains and creating shortages, driving up the cost of everything from gas to groceries, freezing almost 30% of U.S. cargo shipments. According to one estimate, consumers and businesses could lose up to $2 billion a day. A strike would also wreak havoc for the nearly 7 million commuters and travelers that rely on the rails.
Our thanks to Mary. Now to the new clues in the case of the murder of 2 teenage girls in Delphi, Indiana in 2017. A judge today unsealed court documents revealing for the first time the evidence used in the arrest of a suspect, including a bullet found near the girls' bodies that was linked to the suspect's gun. Here's ABC's Alex Perez.
Tonight, new details in the chilling murders of 2 teenagers in Delphi, Indiana. A judge unsealing a court document laying out the evidence used to arrest Richard Allen. Police say they executed a search warrant at Allen's home last month, seizing boots, knives, and firearms, including a .40 caliber pistol they say ties Allen to the crime scene. Investigators say they recovered a .40 caliber unspent round between the victims' bodies, and that a state lab determined had been cycled through Allen's gun. Another piece of critical evidence, that infamous video captured by 14-year-old Libby German on her cell phone. Police say Libby was rolling as Allen walked behind her and 13-year-old friend Abby Williams on that bridge. According to documents, one of the girls is heard mentioning a gun as the man approaches, then orders them down the hill in that haunting audio. Allen worked at the local CVS and lived just 2 miles from the crime scene. He was interviewed by police back in 2017 when he admitted being on the trail that day. Prosecutors say Allen may not have acted alone.
That if any other person had any involvement in these murders in any way, that person or persons will be held accountable.
And Lindsay, police still have not said how exactly the girls died. Allen has pleaded not guilty. He denies knowing or encountering the girls. Lindsay?
Alex, thank you. Now to the latest on the investigation into the killings of those 4 University of Idaho students. Police are combing through hundreds of tips and thousands of pieces of evidence. ABC News' Kana Whitworth spoke with the father of one of the victims and has the very latest on the case.
Students on edge at the University of Idaho as the search for the killer in that brutal quadruple homicide enters its 3rd week.
It is disconcerting that there is somebody out there who's done such a horrible thing and they haven't been caught.
The school posting this notice on social media Monday, writing increased security will be on site for the remainder of the semester. Steve Gonzalez, the father of one of the victims, 21-year-old Kaylee, now shedding new light on what happened that night in his first sit-down interview.
It was fast, and nobody suffered and nobody felt like that kind of pain.
2 other roommates survived on the ground floor, waking up several hours later, calling friends over when their roommates were unresponsive.
Do you know the reason why the initial concern was that a roommate was passed out?
I know the girls reached out via texting and calling, so I can only assume that by the phones being ignored, knowing how my daughter is not going to ignore calls and texting.
Officials maintain the murders happened between 3 and 4 a.m. and that the first 911 call was made around noon. Just hours later, Steve was informed of his daughter's death, not by police, but by family members on campus.
Let's call Maddie. And then you realize Maddie's gone too.
Madison Mogan was Kaylee's lifelong best friend. The pair seen together in their final hours of life, laughing and ordering late-night food before getting a ride home together in what Steve described as a sorority-designated driver service.
You can't imagine sending your girl to college and then they come back in an urn.
And now, the families of the victims growing frustrated by the lack of answers.
I haven't earned the ability to grieve the way that I want to grieve. I want to be able to have justice first.
Understandably so. Our thanks to Kana. Still to come, the country the U.S. is giving millions in aid to and why it's encouraging other nations to do the same. And they're known for death-defying acts and high-flying acrobatics, but the pandemic paused their performances. Director Dawn Porter tells us how her new documentary highlights the hurdles and hope surrounding Cirque du Soleil's return. This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
in Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
Here at the White House. Destructive Cat 4 storm.
Here along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye. Let's go. We made it.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Bring them on.
If only there was a place in the morning to start my day. With a smile, somewhere to help me get in the know. A place as spectacular as, well, me.
I think we might know a place, right, guys?
Bring your friends.
Oh, wait, there is.
Good morning, America.
GMA, 7A, every day. Boom, boom, boom. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Robin. Good morning, America. How are you?
Boom. Now that's how you start your day, people.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
Can I hug you?
Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
As of today, in a big way, we have inaugurated abcnews.com.
A lot has changed in our world since Peter made that announcement. But what hasn't changed is the commitment to groundbreaking reporting and innovation at abcnews.com. And here's to everything ahead.
Now streaming on ABC News Live 2020. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
Welcome back. We're tracking several headlines around the world. The U.S. will provide Ukraine with more than $53 million to acquire critical electric grid equipment to help its citizens get through the winter, according to the State Department. Washington has also been encouraging other countries to do the same so that Kyiv can avert blackouts that leave millions in the dark and without heat in the middle of sub-zero temperatures. A flare-up in violence coupled with severe drought have hospitals in Somalia feeling strained. The number of mass casualty incidents related to the armed conflict has increased by 30% as hospitals simultaneously navigate the threefold increase in children admitted for cases of malnutrition. The United Nations warned at the beginning of September more than 500,000 children in Somalia are at risk of dying from malnutrition. If you've eaten Salvadoran food, you've likely had a pupusa. Now a new record has been claimed for the largest one ever made. A team of cooks in El Salvador baked a giant pupusa that measured 18 feet in diameter and required 500 pounds of corn flour. A pupusa is a thick corn tortilla stuffed with savory ingredients like pork meat, refried beans, and cheese. The achievement marked National Pupusa Day, which Salvadorans usually celebrate on the second Sunday in November. At the height of the pandemic, the famous Cirque du Soleil closed all 44 of its shows and let go 95% of its staff. More than a year later, director and producer Dawn Porter brings the story of magic back to life, showcasing how these performers made their comeback in the new documentary Cirque du Soleil Without a Net. Let's take a look.
We have rescue divers during the entire show. If you were to watch underwater, it's a completely different show. because they're moving equipment. They're helping to move performers from one side of the stage to the other. They are catching performers that come into the water. Their job is just as difficult and dangerous as ours.
Really so fascinating just to watch this. Dawn Porter joins us now in studio. Thank you so much for being here.
I love being here. Thanks for having me.
So what made you decide, you know what, I want to take a look at this comeback of Cirque du Soleil?
You know, well, first, Cirque allowed us to come in, which was extraordinary. And if you're a filmmaker, your first question is always, what access do I have? And they agreed to let us literally embed with them as they tried to come back. They had 8 weeks to get to mount that show. And this is the O show, which is cast over a pool. It is the most ambitious, most difficult show for them. It's really their flagship show. So the opportunity to be with them as they tried to make this comeback was kind of irresistible. But the other thing is, this was during lockdown that they invited us. This is before vaccines. And so the opportunity for me to come out of my lockdown and watch their efforts, I felt like the Cirque performers were doing what we all wanted to do.
Talk to us, because 8 weeks to do something like this seems like just a blink of an eye, especially because they had been off for more than 400 days.
They had been off for a year and a half. And so if you think about it, they left work just like many of us left and never went back. There were dirty towels in the laundry. The equipment hadn't been tested. This is a show over water. And to not have tested this gigantic pool, there's a lot of danger involved, and there was a lot technically that they had to overcome. The most difficult thing was they weren't used to being together. And a Cirque show is all about timing. If you can't catch that performer that's flipping you through the air, it's really dangerous.
And you talk about the catching just now, that metaphor, but in particular, you focus on one of the participants, Amber, who was getting a divorce from her husband, who was her catcher. So you also tell these kind of side stories. How did you end up getting into that layer? Because I think that people are going to see it expecting, oh, this is just about, you know, the group getting the band back together, so to speak.
You know, the thing that I'm most interested in as a documentarian is the human story. Who are these people who are doing these extraordinary feats on stage? And so what I was interested in is not just who the performers were on stage, but what are they like at home? What were they dealing with? And to know that someone's going through something that so many people have gone through, but she's able to show up for work. She's able to do literally death-defying acts while she's having this huge emotional crisis. And it made me respect the performers even more.
While we see them on the screen doing these death-defying feats, they also had so many hurdles behind the scenes, right? Because in some cases, many of them who were from overseas, they didn't have a visa anymore. Once they weren't working, they had to go back home.
Cirque laid off 95% of its staff. They basically let everyone go. So at the time of the lockdown, they went from having hundreds of shows to having 0. No income, no employees, no infrastructure. And so it was just a really small core that had to keep this going. That extended to the performers. If you're here on a performance visa, you work for that employer. You can't transfer and go work for someone else. So the only option they had was to try and hope that Cirque would come back. So the stakes for those people are incredibly high.
You got such access, really, to kind of peer behind the curtain of nothing of what we would ever see as an audience member. What surprised you the most? What were you most taken by?
The thing that I think we really wanted to show and to emphasize is everything in Cirque and the O show is handmade. The costumes are hand sewn. The performers, it's all their bodies. It's all of their athleticism. One thing that was so surprising is how many of them are elite Olympic athletes. And they might be performing for just a few minutes, but their job in the show is to make it look easy and seamless.
Which is just so impressive, even beyond what they already do. What do you hope that viewers will take away from this?
It was so inspiring to be in their beautiful world. The O show, which is in Las Vegas, it's an enormous show. It's an enormous undertaking, but there are no words. There's no dialogue in that show. And so I think that there really is a magic to how they're able to come together and how they're able to create a world of connection.
And what a testimony to their perseverance as well. Dawn Porter, we thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
No, thank you. It's so great to be here.
And still to come, the cast of Love Actually looks back on creating the instant holiday classic and takes us behind the scenes of some of the movie's most iconic moments.
This is where I belong. This is home. Real dirt in the sunlight again. I'm very excited. Anything could happen at any moment. My heart is so happy right now. We're making magic. We're making magic.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast, now streaming on ABC News Live. After an extraordinary news-making year, thank you for making ABC's This Week America's #1 news and politics show on Sunday mornings.
Zoo! 200! Oh, 200.
200 episodes of Dr. Pol. Music to my ears.
It's been 10 years, and I'm still having fun.
That rocks. He's got the moves that make your animals groove.
Now we do the dance of joy. Yay!
He's like the Justin Bieber of the
Headlining the hottest barns.
Cut out.
It's a show you won't want to miss.
I'm not going to be here forever. Maybe.
The Incredible Dr. Pol. New episodes Saturdays at 9 on Nat Geo Wild.
It's been 20 years since Hugh Grant reminded us that love actually is all around. To celebrate the beloved and hilarious holiday classic, ABC's Diane Sawyer is hosting a primetime special tonight featuring interviews with stars of the movie and behind-the-scenes secrets. Here's a look at the laughter and secrets of Love Actually 20 years later, a Diane Sawyer special.
It's a little film that has become a global sensation. We've all watched Love Actually for more than 4.6 billion minutes. Audiences all over the world. Holiday favorite that keeps giving the competition a run for its money year after year after year. And people don't just watch, they rewatch and rewatch, and then recreate their favorite scenes. Like this scene in the movie, the cue card declaration. Everyone tries that. Everyone. Even someone on Saturday Night Live. And when the movie features a prime minister doing a really embarrassing dance, all of us in our living rooms try it too. So we decided to travel to London to find the people who made that beloved movie 20 years ago, to talk to them about hilarity, heartbreak, and how we love then and now.
Cameras going, phones up.
We're in the offices of a film studio. Someone is rushing down the hall. It's Emma Thompson.
Poster for Love Actually, oddly enough. I know. Oh, sweet.
Wow.
God, I
can't
believe you're here.
I don't know if surprised is the word. Do you get why it's become this thing?
I so do. I so get it.
No?
Yeah, because I think that we forget, time and time again, we forget that love is all that matters. It's all that matters.
And she wasn't the only big star who signed on for the movie. We're at a rooftop overlooking central London.
Hello, hello. You have a huge crew.
We do, because it's you. You know what I mean?
I am important.
Hugh Grant plays the prime minister who inconveniently falls in love with someone in his office, tries to avoid seeing her, but ends up knocking on random doors to find her.
Is Natalie here?
The part was written especially for him by the writer and director Richard Curtis, who's also his friend.
A, he is funny. That's just a black and white thing. He's funny. And B, it comes from the heart. It's true.
Lessons in all kinds of complicated love brought to you by an outlandish aging rock star a little boy with a crush who needs his stepdad's help, and a mother who teaches us about shattered dreams and how you hold on when love has been changed by life.
And ambivalent love is still love.
Yes, and it's still love. And unrequited love, which is the most painful thing on the planet, but it's still love. My grandmother used to say, your heart's no good as a heart until it's been broken at least 10 times. You know, that there's somehow something about the scar tissue that makes it stronger.
And here is the man who wrote and directed this movie. Curtis is the writer behind 4 Weddings and a Funeral, Bridget Jones' Diary, and that unforgettable moment in Notting Hill.
I'm also just a girl standing in front of a boy, asking him to love her.
He says he still wants to write about the ways we're good to each other in a world that has so many movies filled with trauma and violence.
We get thousands of films about serial killers, and there's only ever been about 9 of them. And yet, there'll be 1 million people falling in love, feeling it's the most interesting moment of their lives. I do think the way to think about life is that every day has the potential, in all its simplicity, just to be gorgeous.
The message of a film 20 years old, back when all these characters were a new idea, and back when one scene almost didn't happen. As we know, the Prime Minister was a big star who kind of enjoys his reputation for being stubborn. He's supposed to improvise a kind of victory dance, but he won't.
I think I saw it in the script and I thought, well, I'll hate doing that.
He kept saying no.
But how did you get him on that day to that point?
Oh, he was grumpy. He was grumpy, but he knew it was a contractual obligation, a bit of contractual obligation acting.
And so he starts.
Yes.
And what are you thinking of it?
I'm thinking, oh, good, he's doing it. 2, that's agonizingly embarrassing. He's just perfect.
And I'm out of rhythm, by the way, especially at the beginning when I wiggle my arm. There's a later bit, right at the end, that I'm sort of doing this, when my lips are out of sync with the song. But I will give myself this credit. It was my idea to have that, a secretary lady, catch me. Genius.
Nice. So tonight, come to laugh and take a look around you at the love you may not have noticed, but in fact make it the best day of your life.
Come on, Flav, come and do your dance. That's our show for tonight. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. Have a great night.
Tonight, we celebrate